Managing a small team or business comes with a unique set of challenges. With limited resources and manpower, it's easy for things to feel chaotic and out of your control. How can you, as a leader, accomplish your goals while keeping your team engaged, effective, and accountable? This podcast will give you practical strategies you can implement now to lead your team or business to reach its fullest potential. Welcome to the Organizing Chaos podcast with your host, Danny Coleman.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Organizing Chaos, where we find small practical strategies for small teams and small businesses. So today, I still don't have my video, my camera. I know those of you who like to tune in on YouTube, I apologize that I'm not there with my marker board and my bearded face, which I'm sure you've gotten so used to seeing, and now you're sad that you don't see it. But alas, I will come back and it'll be in full HD. I'm actually, after I'm done recording this episode, picking out my new camera. I'd previously gotten a camera and it wasn't working with my computer. Apparently my computer was too advanced and I tried to go too cheap on the camera, so shame on me, lesson learned. My mantra usually with technology is to get the best because technology moves so quickly, and here I was not listening to my own rule. So anyways, that said, today's going to be another audio only episode. So hopefully if you are watching this on YouTube, you're not too disappointed and you'll bear with me as I get a better rig in the future. So today I want to talk about something that has been coming up a lot with the different conversations that I either have with consulting clients or prospective clients. And that is just the notion that your integrator might already be on your team. So there's a lot of people that I speak to, and I look for common denominators, or I look for the patterns, I look for the similarities in what it is I do. And I work with a lot of visionaries, a lot of owners, a lot of people who've created their business. They started their business, or they're the owner. They whipped it up from scratch, more or less. Maybe they had some help or whatever, but I digress. The point being is that they're owners, right? So these are typically, in almost all cases, the owner is a visionary, because what they're doing is they're trying to bring something new into the world that does not yet exist. So in that sense, they have a vision for something and they want to execute it a certain way. And so as such, they are visionaries. And then integrators, as I'm referring to throughout all of my podcast episodes for that matter, but for this one specifically, the integrator is then the person who helps actualize that vision. They are the detail person. They are the person who's better at management. And so anyways, I've done a whole episodes on this stuff before, but what I want to talk about today is how your integrator, or your general manager, to use more common terminology, is very likely already on your team. Now, if you're a team of, 2 people, then maybe that's not the case. But I'm talking about, if you've got like 3, 4, 5 people on your team, and you've been around for, at least 2-3 years perhaps, you probably already have your integrator on your team. Now, I'm going to talk about a lot of different things that I've noticed. People will say, oh yeah, well, we'll just use Johnny. Johnny will be our integrator, our diamond in the rough integrator today. And so I'll work with owners and they'll be like, yeah, Johnny's really great. But he yada, 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 whatever these different examples of different things that they'll notice that he does. And what I notice is that there's a pattern between what visionaries are picking up on these, their potential integrators. And this is what I try to do when I find that. I try to encourage them to make that person their integrator. Lots of times there's already a good fit right off the bat because there's trust and whatnot. But anyways, I kind of want to go through this. It's easy for me to get kind of all over the place on this. So I kind of want to start from just a couple things that maybe you've noticed someone on your team doing. So do you have someone on your team who's really big on making lists? Maybe you walk by every morning or every Monday or something like that. You see that they're putting together this list. And you may even be like, man, like I wish I had that kind of dedication, or I wish I had that kind of, whatever, that ability to just kind of sit down and make a list for my whole week. But that's not what comes naturally to you. But you see this person kind of doing it regularly. Oftentimes I'll hear people will say about their Johnny is that, I feel like he lacks creativity sometimes, and that's again, this is another common integrator thing. Integrators typically are not all that creative. I'm not all that creative when I, in my typical integrator function. However, to visionaries, integrators really don't seem creative, and that's just kind of how it is. They're trying to do more than you ask, so lots of times you'll give them a task, but then they end up kind of almost one-upping what you wanted them to do, and typically it works out just fine, and sometimes you're impressed, but other times maybe it's a little bit annoying. Maybe you see that they're really good at owning the different projects that you do give them. You hand something off to them, you do feel more confident in their ability to get it done than anybody else on your team. Another thing that I get a lot is they ask you a lot of questions. We ask a lot of questions because we're trying to clarify the vision. The vision is usually ambiguous. Visionaries, you guys paint in broad strokes. Integrators, they like to be able to know what those details are, to know if what they're doing is right. Are they meeting the expectations? And so lots of times, integrators are going to ask a lot of questions. And then another thing too is like oftentimes I find this, I'm not serious. This has got to be at least 9 out of 10, maybe even everybody I've talked to where their integrator was already on their team. It's like, yeah, everybody really likes them. Everybody really respects them. Like they're a drama-free kind of person. These are all just little things that I've noticed throughout my time about visionaries saying about people on their team who I believe are their prospective integrators, or I'm right, and we do go ahead and move forward and make them the integrator. Another one that I get a lot too that I like is, you wonder kind of why they're still with you. Lots of times you'll be just like, man, so-and-so is like really good, and I can really depend on them and stuff like that. And sometimes you just wonder like, man, why are they here? Why are they still here in this, this haphazard business where things are kind of crazy and, there's not a lot of clarity, or I can't pay them a lot of money, or we don't have any benefits and stuff like that. So anyways, hopefully some of those different things spurred some of your thoughts. Maybe someone on your team came to mind, but I want to kind of address a few of these specifically and talk about why it is that if you have an employee exhibiting this behavior, they may actually be a very good fit as your integrator. And I will preface all this by saying, small businesses typically don't have the budget to hire someone with a lot of experience. So small businesses, your advantage is then to hire someone who has less experience but is a diamond in the rough, right? Or is ready to be developed in some way or another. And that's what your job is, but that's what your options are. You can either fork out the dough and get somebody who's got a lot of experience and have them come into your business, or you can find a diamond in the rough, someone who's already on your team who shows some promise, and you can develop them. And it's going to be for cheaper. And I'll say that also, too, I believe that this is the way to go because you're also going to have a lot more loyalty from this person who kind of grows up within your business rather than the person who you hire from outside. You're looking for someone to manage your coffee house. And so instead of taking the barista who's shown a lot of management promise or whatever, you want to go out and find someone who's ran a coffee house successfully and has got a good track record and whatnot. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But I will say, when you bring that person in from the outside, you're also bringing along all of their, however they've developed as a person, all their different quirks and the way that they've done things. You're bringing all that with them, whereas you have the opportunity to, when you're dealing with somebody who's less experienced or younger or whatever, you're able to then kind of grow them up in the way that you kind of see, and you can kind of get them more matched up with your vision. So anyways, I digress. So making lists, right? I'm going to kind of rapid fire through these. I usually do I'm pretty sacred about doing like 3 steps or 3, simple things or whatever, 5. But I'm just going to I don't even know how many I wrote down here, but these are all just all the different things that I've heard from visionaries about, like I said, potential people on their team or potential integrators on their team. So 1, making lists, right? We are list makers. When it comes to getting stuff done, we have to define it beforehand and then look at our record afterwards to be able to know that we did what was asked of us. What really, really will crush an integrator is feeling like they've missed something, feeling like something slipped past them. Because integrators, we pride ourselves on our ability to write everything down. We usually take good notes, or we're the note takers during meetings, and so we make lists very religiously because that list is what's going to dictate how we spend the rest of our time. So if you find an employee regularly making lists on your team, there's a little, I'll say green flag. Red flags usually have a negative connotation, so we'll say it's a green flag. This might be an integrator for you. You feel like they lack creativity. Okay, so this is a point where you need to remember that it takes two good entrepreneurs to create a business, to create a great business. You need two entrepreneurs, and I preach the gospel of the visionary and integrator relationship, which is two sides of the same coin. The integrator is going to be less creative than the visionary. The visionary is more creative. This is their baby. This is their idea. This is their business. And so the integrator being less creative is completely fine. You don't need, you can't expect someone to be Superman. They can't be great at everything. So what they lack in creativity, they should be making up for in dedication to process, in detail orientation, and things like that nature. So when you feel like you're working with someone, who you're like, man, all these great things about them, but man, they're not really all that creative, that's okay. An integrator typically is not a real creative type. And that's just kind of the way it goes. If you divide up, I could do a whole episode on this where I would just sprawl talking about the difference between, like, there's admin type duties and sales type duties, and those are just two different personalities, two different natural skill sets, and it kind of mirrors, the same sort of concept applies to the visionary and integrator as well. The creativity is not the wheelhouse of the integrator. Doesn't mean that they can't be creative. Doesn't mean they can't draw or sketch or write, lyrics or, be a songwriter or something like that in, traditional creative sense. But if you feel like they're not bringing enough creativity to your business, that might not be a bad thing, because really if you're the visionary, you're the one who's bringing the creative. You're kind of the head of the creative process. It doesn't mean that they can't give you some input, but I digress. My point being, if you feel like they're lacking creativity, that's not a bad thing if you're looking for an integrator. Another thing is, are they trying to do more than you ask? Okay, so that's another integrator tendency, and there's good and bad to it. But typically, what's good about it is that when you say, hey, I need you to go forth and do XYZ project, because they're going to go above and beyond, they want to really impress you, because that's how it is. This integrators get attached to visionaries, and they have this sense of admiration about the visionary. Maybe they see qualities in the visionary that they want. So your integrator is going to follow or is going to go out and do whatever it is you want to do, but they really want to impress you. They want to one up, maybe whatever it is you ask them to do. So if you find that you have an employee doing that, don't necessarily discourage that. Now, there's a bad part of that, right? There's sometimes where they can waste time or use time poorly, and that's actually another thing that I should have put on my list. I've heard that one a lot before too. Is that visionaries will see that they think integrators don't spend their time well. And typically this just means that the visionary and integrator haven't really worked out their chemistry all that well, because the visionary has kind of the way that priorities work to them sort of float around a little bit. There's different things that are important at different times, and lots of times they want everything done all at once. And integrators try very hard to deliver on everything, but they can very easily, if they're following an unchained visionary, then they're going to very easily expend themselves, or they're going to wipe themselves out trying to keep up with all of the various priorities that visionaries point out as being a priority for the business, or something that the integrators should be spending their time on. So as a visionary, if you feel like your integrator isn't spending their time all that well, doesn't mean you're wrong, but it means that you guys need to have a conversation, and your integrator really needs to step up a little bit and take the reins away from you a little bit, so that you aren't moving around your priorities all the time, but that you're sticking with priorities. Again, that goes back to quarterly plans and different things like that, where there's kind of pre-decided, you decided beforehand where priorities should be at. So if you feel like they're not spending their time all that well, or they're going above and beyond what you're asking them to do, it really just means that communication, there's bad communication there. Have some communication, and again, this may be another green flag that you've got a potential integrator on your hands. Another thing is that you feel confident in them owning what it is you hand to them. I mean, this is pretty much a very obvious green flag. If you feel like you can hand something off to somebody, and you trust that they're going to run with it and they're going to get it done, even if it's not exactly what you want when it comes back, it's going to pretty much be close to what you need it to be. That's another great person to have as your right hand, man or woman, to be able to have that kind of trust in a work environment, especially in a small business or a small team. Really, really valuable stuff. A few other things that I mentioned earlier. So like asking you a lot of questions, right? Trying to get detail. That goes back to the thing that I kind of talked about when it comes to lists. When they ask you a lot of these questions, they're not trying to be annoying or they're not trying to be a buzzkill, but in order to actualize what it is that's in your brain, and as a visionary, we have to ask all these questions. We have to because we're thinking about the reality, right? And you're thinking in non-reality land, and that's fine. That's where it's supposed to be. That's how the dynamic works. So the integrator, when they're asking a lot of these detail-oriented questions, that's because they're trying to make sure that they deliver and create or bring in, help you manifest the thing that you're dreaming up, or the thing that you're wanting to see happen. So all of those questions, all those details, that's just them kind of trying to bring the idea out of you. Kind of like it's almost like a baby, right? Like you're birthing this idea. Either it's a new business or a new service or something like that, and they're asking all these questions to try to ease that baby on out of you. And hopefully this isn't a weird image for anybody, but it helps people to clarify. It helps integrators clarify what it is you really want. So that way they can go forward and do the thing, and then that thing looks very close to or is exactly what it is you'd wanted from them. So that's why we ask a lot of detail-oriented questions. And then let's see, kind of one other one that I really wanted to hit on was just, sometimes you wonder why they're still with you. I know I can't speak for all integrator types, but I know that for a while personally, I just lacked a lot of confidence in being able in what I was able to do. Like I there was a part of me, it was weird. It was like I knew that I had a good work ethic and that I could, accomplish things. But once I would do them and people would congratulate me on them, or my boss would say, "Awesome, Danny, you're a rock star. You did a really great job," or whatever. It would just roll right off my back. And I don't know, if that, how deep does that go? Everyone carries some certain amount of baggage with them. Everyone's lacks their ability in some way or another. I know plenty of super talented people who are constantly being overly humble and whatnot. So maybe it's just a human trait. I'm not really sure. But what I do know is that there are plenty of people who either told me or they'll talk about, potential integrators or integrators on their team. They're like, "Man, I don't even know why they're still with us. Things are crazy around here, or I can barely even pay them, I'm just waiting for them to wake up and realize that they could go on and get something way better somewhere else." And maybe that's true. Maybe they could go on to do something better. But the point is that they're with you now. And so it's up to you to capture that talent that they have and to give them opportunities to develop it within your business so that all of that energy and all of that development that they're going to do gets funneled into your business, and you have a better life because you've got an integrator on your side who's helping you kind of bring your vision to life. And then you also, in turn, are giving someone an opportunity to be a part of something really great. You're giving the integrator letting them be a part of your story and be a part of your business. So anyways, hopefully some of these things rang true or reminded you of somebody on your team. And what I would suggest as like a takeaway today is, if that's true, if any of these things kind of made you think of someone on your team, if you have a Johnny on your team and some of these things are true about him, consider giving them more responsibility. Maybe don't go right to the idea of making them your integrator or general manager and all of a sudden handing them the keys to the kingdom. But start thinking about how you can give them more responsibility, because for an integrator, getting more responsibility is better than a pay raise. And that sounds ridiculous. It sounds like it's untrue, but I can tell you right now it is. Now, I'll be real and say, yes, eventually, once you're throwing a bunch of stuff on someone's lap, they are going to eventually want to see some type of monetary compensation. But first and foremost, an integrator is satisfied knowing that they did a good job and knowing that things are working and running correctly, and that they're appreciated. Those are the things that matter the most. And I can tell you that's for me. That's what matters most to me as an integrator. And that's what the different integrators who I've talked to or potential integrators I've spoken to, those are the things that I find to be common denominators between myself and them and others like them. So anyways, like I said, again, hopefully you're able to take some action on this and find your integrator. Like I said, look around you. Oftentimes they are on your team, and that's where all of these ideas came from today that I shared with you. All these different little tidbits I've heard from visionaries throughout my time is just exactly that. So look around you before you think you got to go out and find an integrator or find a general manager or hire someone in with a lot of experience who's going to cost you a lot of money. Look around, see who might be ready for some more responsibility on your team already. So thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and thanks for bearing with me while I have gone audio and video, or video free rather, for the last couple weeks. Like I said, I'm getting a better camera in here, and I think you guys are gonna like it. And for those of you who are listening on audio, please, if you're listening to me on either iTunes or Stitcher, I'd really appreciate if you hopped off right now and just wrote me a little review and gave me a 5-star review. Is always welcome, but I will take any stars. I want that honest feedback. And you can always shoot me an email at danny@dannycoleman.me if you have a topic idea or you're interested in being interviewed on my podcast. If you have something to share with my audience, small business owners and small team managers, I would love to share that with them. So, and follow me on Instagram. I am Danny Coleman is my handle there, and also it's on Twitter. And I gotta be honest with you, I check Twitter almost never, so I'm probably gonna stop even pitching following me on Twitter. So follow me on Instagram if you're interested. And again, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you later.
Want more? Go to dannycoleman.me to download Danny's free small business hiring guide, which includes tips, templates, and tools, plus a step-by-step process you can use to find and keep high-quality employees for your small team or business.